Greetings everyone and welcome in this webinar. Today we'll be discussing about ISO 40001 implementation advantages. My name is Suzan Ayeti and I'm the PCB organizer of this webinar. The guest for today is Mr. Hossam Shalabi, Fire Protection Engineer at the Canadian Nuclear Laboratories and PCB Certified Trainer at NISKAA Group. Please write your questions and comments in the question box in the right-hand control panel, and Mr. Shalabi will answer to them accordingly. Moreover, if you want to participate directly with Mr. Shalabi in the discussion, you can also raise your hand, and then we will unmute you so you can make your question directly to him. Please, Mr. Shalabi, you may start the presentation.
Thank you, Suzanne. Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Shalabi. I know Suzanne made a quick introduction. And today I'm going to be discussing the ISO 14001 implementation advantages to companies. My agenda is going to be, the first thing I'm willing to discuss will be the real value of ISO 14001 for any company. The financial impact of ISO 14001 on companies. How does ISO 14001 help management systems to integrate in a company? What is required from a company to implement ISO 14001? And we're going to close down by conclusion. The real value of ISO 14001 for any company, there's a lot of value that ISO 14001 adds to every company. Some of these values are a reduction in exposure to non-compliance with environmental legislation. The controls introduced by the system and program of internal and external audit will increase compliance. Meeting customer demand. As awareness of environmental issues increases, so does the need for companies to address these concerns. Tenants, existing and future environmental concerns will be met through certification, thus providing a competitive edge. You also get publicity. A limited number of organizations in the real sectors have gained ISO 14001 certification. Site gaining certification, especially those obtained first, will benefit from an opportunity to publicize this achievement locally and nationally, appealing to both public and tenants. Management. Certification is assurance to landlord that the managing agent is managing the property in a manner that maximizes the efficiency of its running. Therefore, minimizing costs, ensure compliance with legislation. Example, costs can be reduced through effective waste management and energy efficiency. Another benefit to business that choose to become certified to ISO 14001 is that substantial number of citizens can be influenced in their buying decision. Obtaining ISO 14001 certification is a way for companies to demonstrate their environmental stewardship and accountability to the public. ISO 14001 certification attract investors to business organizations. A growing number of individual investors as well as investment managers and managers of mutual funds search for environmentally responsible businesses. The company may save money on insurance premium. For example, some insurance companies give reduced rates on insurance to cover accidental pollution release if the insurance company has successfully implemented an EMS. It has potential to lead to kinds of culture changes. One of them would be within individual companies, and other would be a global change. First, within the corporation, the ISO 14001 series can promote consideration of environmental issues through the company's operations. Managers of companies that have implemented ISO 9001 have learned to view their company's operation through a quality of management. Similarly, It is hoped that implementation of ISO 14001 will lead to the use of environmental quality lens by businesses. ISO 14000 series have a potential to become a part of a global culture as the public comes to view ISO 14001 certification as a benchmark continuing good environmental stewardship. Other advantages can be for businesses who goes to tenders, or can give you an edge over competitors. Compliance with individual countries' environmental regulations and demonstrate that your company is always committed to continuous improvement to the environment. It also shows that you're responsible for future-focused organization. The financial impact of ISO 14001 on companies. There are many studies that were done on a positive financial impact for implementing ISO 14001, and today I'm going to be discussing 3 of them quickly. The first one will be a resource-based perspective on corporate environmental performance and profitability, and this was done in 1997 by Russo and Foods. Drawing on the resource-based view of the firm, the environmental performance and economic performance are positively linked, and that industry growth moderate the relationship, with the return of environmental performance higher in high-growth industries. The study tested these hypotheses with an analysis of 243 firms over 2 years. Using independently developed environmental rating, results indicates that it pays to be green, and that's relationship strength within the industry's growth. They concluded by highlighting the study academic and managerial implication, making special reference to the social issues in management literature. The second study I'm going to be discussing is going to be the environmental management system. ISO 14001 is a procedure that some companies have adopted in order to reduce their environmental impact. This study was done in 2012, and the study examined the effect of environmental management certification. ISO 14001 has publicly traded Brazilian companies' profitability. Signaling theory predicts that the certification serves to signal to society good environment behavior, allowing people to screen the different types of firm, improving the financial performance of those firms that engage in this behavior. The study performed difference fixed effect design, comparing the financial performance of companies with and without certification of the environmental management system, using a data of 552 companies over a period from 1996 to 2008. The results indicated that the firms with environmental management system certified according to the ISO 14001-2004 standard tended to be more profitable on average than firms without certification. The result showed that an average using a two-side fixed effect specification firms that implemented EMS certification got an earning before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, and a net income, which is the measure of the profitability, of 11% and 24.6% higher, respectively, that firms without EMS certification. This means that the study concluded that the companies that adopt ISO 14001 in Brazil from 1996 to 2008 had a 13% average higher profit than the one who didn't. Hence, this implies firms that implement EMS certification tends to increase their economical financial results. The result coincide with findings from Russo and Folt's 1997 that I discussed before, that use return on assets as dependent variable and showed positive relation with environmental performance. The results add to a literature analyzing the profit measure, which is the most important measure for shareholders. The effect of ISO 14001 environmental management system to corporate financial performance by Zhenging 2006 also confirmed the same conclusions from the two studies above in this slide. Implementation of EMS is likely to reduce the toxic spills in your firm. It also may help corporations to obtain loans and protect them from allegation of investors' fraud. Implementing ISO 14001 also can result in internal cost saving as a result of waste reduction, use of fewer toxic chemicals, and reduced energy use. ISO 14001 can also reduce your insurance cover cost and avoid any environmental associated risks. Other financial benefits to the company when implementing ISO 14001 can be a cost reduction in raw materials, a reduction of waste treatment cost, eliminating fines, reducing accidents, and introducing recycle programs if they don't exist in a company, from plastics to paper to wood. All of these recycle programs can reduce waste to landfill and even generate income to the business. How does ISO 14001 help all management systems to integrate in a company? ISO 14001 improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization and avoid duplication of effort. It does this by eliminating duplication of policies, procedures, and registers. It aligns the goals, processes, and resources. A reduction in cost of internal and external audits, and a joint training and improved communication between all organization levels. Again, in the ISO 14001, how it helps management systems to integrate in a company. It encourages employee engagement and counts for accountability. Ongoing internal and external audits ensure weaknesses are identified and improvements are completed. It also creates a mechanism to identify performance and compare it to years before and to help you to forecast for years later on. What is required for a company to implement ISO 14001? There is mainly three general requirements that a company needs to fulfill and comply with ISO 14001. The first thing is creating an EMS, an environmental management system. The second thing is it shows that you're compliant in a full legal compliant in your country. A lot of countries have different environmental legal requirements. ISO 14001 helps you to identify this and make sure that you comply with them in order to renew or get your certificate. It also shows that your company is in continuous improvement in environmental protection and pollution prevention. The requirement of the standard include, there's a lot of stuff that needs to be integrated and implemented, which takes some time at the beginning if you don't have an ISO 14001, but once you set up your standard, once you set up your system, then pretty much after this it's just identifying your targets for the second year. You're doing your internal audit, you're meeting, you're saying pretty much you are doing what you said you're gonna do. This shows that the company will comply with what they said. So the requirement of the standard includes, number one, environmental policy. This environmental policy has to be mainly signed by the CEO or the president of the company to show that the company's president or CEO actually agrees and backs up the environmental management system. And usually it should be in the entrance of the company. This also gives a good impression that your company adopted EMS with a full management support. A definition of roles and responsibilities. There is a lot of roles in your company that people are already doing day to day. Environmental roles and responsibilities have to be also identified and agreed on to be able to take responsibility and accountability for these roles. Training. Training has to be identified. Environmental training has to be identified for all employees in the company. If you're in the manufacturing floor, if you're an HR, if you're an engineer, each different position requires different training, and all of these trainings should be in a matrix for renewal and to identify the required training to do your job safely and in an environmentally friendly environment. Environmental risk and environmental legislation. Environmental risk is pretty much the risk assessment that has to be done in any company. A risk assessment that can be a qualitative or a quantitative risk assessment to identify what are my risks and what are the consequences of these risks and what's the probability of this risks to happen and how this would impact my company. The impact of the company has to be taken into consideration from loss of business, from harming of an employee, from an environmental release, and from a business reputation as well. So a lot of time has to be spent in a risk assessment, and a lot of people would be involved in doing this assessment from different departments. This will help the ISO 14001 to be implemented in a clear and a good way for the company. After this, objectives and targets. At every year, the environmental management system has to identify objectives and targets for the year coming. Objectives can be, I want to reduce my waste, my chemical waste by 10%. I want to increase my recycle rates of plastics by 15%. I define my objectives and targets, and I have to make a plan how would I meet these objectives and targets. I have to allocate the right resources in terms of money and in terms of people who are going to be actually doing this work. I usually don't want to define goals that I cannot meet. I usually want to define goals that a company can meet. Environmental improvement and on a continuous environmental improvement. ISO follows the plan, do, check, act process. So one has to be in ongoing environmental improvement at all times, has to follow what they said they're going to meet in their target and objectives, and how to prove that they followed these objectives and targets. Effective control of management systems, and one example is records. Keeping records keeping records is one of the essential stuff that you gotta do for ISO 14001. You have procedures which tells an employee what to do, and he has to follow it. And to prove that an employee is following a procedure, you have to create forms. For an example, if you have a chemical room in your building, and one of the procedures saying that each person who goes to a chemical room has to wear a respirator, then you have to have a form in front of the door of the chemical room, and each employee, before he enters the room, he has to sign that he was wearing the respirator. This helps external and internal auditor to examine the real implementation of your procedures. If I'm saying, another example is, if I'm saying I'm meeting all my environmental legal requirements in my province or in my country, this also needs to be shown in paperwork. Another example, if I'm disposing hazardous waste from my company, I have to always keep all the paperwork for this disposition, because this is my evidence that I've done the work. An internal audit program is always very important. An internal audit program, it's one of the requirements in ISO 14001. It's an annual internal audit that has to be done every year for my external audit and my recertification, to show that my external audit, after 5 years, when I'm recertifying or I'm begin to certify that I'm doing my due diligence, I'm doing my work, I'm doing my internal audits. All of this puts it in one perspective, that I'm doing what I'm asked to do, and I'm doing it in a good manner to meet all the requirements. There is always have to be a control of the non-conformance and non-preventative actions that I need to do. So one of the stuff, there's a lot of softwares that produce this non-conformance and non-preventative actions that can be result from an internal or external audit, which identifies who's responsible to meet the action, who's responsible to correct the non-conformance, and who's responsible for who owns the full action. So there's a variety of softwares. They're very simple to use, but you need to use them again, and these softwares keep track of all previous actions and how did you close these actions with the right paperwork. The last thing you need to do for the ISO 14001 to implement it in your company is your management review. Management review is very essential. It's very important part of ISO 14001. It shows that your management really cares. You got your senior management buy-in. They want to see the results. So after you do your risk assessment, after you define your objectives and targets, you want to come at the end of the year and you want to show your senior management how did you manage to meet your objectives? This is one of the main causes of bad implications of implementing ISO 14001. ISO 14001 it integrates all systems together. For an example, if I have a machine and this machine needs maintenance, ISO 14001 will open the door and check if maintenance has been done on this machine, and so on. So it needs senior management backup to be able to open the closed doors and to be able to figure out and find out what's hidden behind the doors.
Mr. Shalabi, thank you for your presentation. We have some questions that we would like to get them answered. So the first question is, how does ISO 40001 relate to infrastructure and work environment?
ISO 14001, if we're going to speak about infrastructure, it does prevent a lot of spills. It decreases the chemical use, and even if you have hazard chemical you're working with, it helps you to store it in the right places. It teaches and guarantee that the person who is handling such a chemical will handle it in a safe manner and will dispose it in a safe, environmentally friendly manner.
Thank you, Mr. Shalabi. We have a few more questions. Do we need consultants for the implementation of ISO 40001 requirements?
You don't specifically need consultant. You can hire, or one of the current employees can take the ISO 14001 implementation training course, and he will be able to create the EMS system in your company. If you don't have this resource, you can always hire a consultant, but I do advise companies to have their own environmental representative. This makes it a lot cheaper and a lot easier. In addition, this person already works in the company, so he knows all the processes and resources, and I'm pretty sure he's familiar with a lot of gaps that he can fix.
Thank you. The other question is, what other ISO standards can be helpful to implement 40001?
I believe that with ISO 14001, you need ISO 9001, which is a quality system, and you do need OSH 18001 for the health and safety. The three of them together, the overlap, and you can have common requirements, and if you're implementing the three of them at the same time, you are actually going to cut a lot of cost of implementation.
And the last question, Mrs. Shalabi says, what are the challenges faced by the top management in the implementing of ISO 40001?
That's a good question, and a lot of managers look at ISO 14001 as an extra cost, as an overhead that they're trying to avoid, but the reality, and as I discussed in the three case studies that in my presentation, is you might have an initial cost of implementing EMS, but during operations and later on in life, you're going to have very good savings, and it's going to boost up your financial benefits. So pretty much the senior manager or the authority needs to know that, yes, I'm spending money today, but tomorrow I'm going to be saving up and making and I'm going to be making a lot more later on.
We do have one more question, Mr. Shalabi. It says, how will we rate or evaluate an environmental aspect as important? How do we know that it is going to be important when we implement 40001?
Do you mean the risk assessment?
Yes.
State. So in the risk assessment, again, risk can be identified as a probability of an incident happens, and you multiply this by the consequences. So if I'm going to a process in the manufacturing floor and I see someone just handling a circuit board, and this circuit board is worth $100 and it has so much chemicals on it. If it falls out from his hand, I have to calculate the consequences. What's the probability? I can use historical data. I can see how many boards has been broken by people handling them. And if I have 10 in the past 10 years, then my probability will be 1 in every year. And the consequences can be if this would harm him, it's the $100 plus my spill on the floor, how to clean it, my loss of time. That's how you rank up your risks and you quantify your risks. It's the consequences, the result, the bad, the harm that happened, and you multiply this by how often does this happen. And once you do this for all of your risks, you can rank them up by the higher and the lower and the medium risks.
Mr. Shalabi, I would like to thank you for this presentation. I want to thank all the attendees for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. We have received all of your questions, and because the time is limited, we will answer to your questions individually by email. Please also check the PCB webinar schedule on our website, www.pcb.com, or our official social media network, since next week we are organizing webinars on interesting topics. Next Tuesday, we are hosting a webinar on the topic Environment, Health and Safety for any organization and what you need to know. Thank you once again, and see you next week.